This video is going to go over the distributive property. We're going to work with parentheses and also then combine like terms. There's a few vocabulary words that we need to go over. Coefficient, that is the number that's in front of a variable, so that's really important. I'm going to highlight that. Coefficient would be the 5. A constant number is just a number that's alone, that's not having a variable with it. The variable is any letter in a term or an expression or an equation. Term, it's each individual thing. So 4x would be a term, r would be a term, and 20 would be a term. Expression is just a math, not equation because it doesn't have an equal sign, but it's like a math sentence. Equation is something that has an equal sign, saying that both sides are equal. And then an inequality is like an equation, except it has a greater than or less than or equal to sign in between. All right, so the first thing we're going to look at is the distributive property. And then once we do that, we will go back and combine the things that are alike. The distributive property lets you multiply numbers that are immediately outside the parentheses with everything inside the parentheses. It can also be separated into different multiplication problems. So for example, right here, this first one says 5 parentheses x plus 2. So basically what this means is I'm going to take the 5 and I'm going to multiply it times the x and then the 5 and multiply it times the 2. Or I have 5 of everything inside the parentheses. So the other way to do it, which would take a really long time, is to write everything out individually. So I could say I have x plus 2, x plus 2, x plus 2, x plus 2, x plus 2. Then I could add all these things together. I have 5 x's, and then when I count up my 2's, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, there is 10. So multiplication is a faster way to do addition of the same thing. So instead of me listing all of this out, I can write it as a really quick multiplication problem, 5 parentheses x plus 2, or it means 5 times x and then 5 times 2. So your page is already filled out for you. You might draw arrows going down to say this is what happened. But this is an explanation, more of an elementary way of explaining what the distributive property actually means. So now that sometimes you do your distributive property, you get terms. Remember, a term is each individual item in the expression or equation. Some terms look alike or they have the same endings so that we could group them together. Like these variables that have a W. I like to do something called the box and circle method. Box and circle method. I'm going to, and if you had more than 2 things, we would do more than just boxes and circles, but I'm going to box the variables. Okay, so then I would put them together. That's how I get 6W. And then I would circle the constant numbers, but I need to make sure I keep the sign with them that's in front. So then that would be 3 minus 1 is 2. Now, once I get down to this spot, I can't simplify this anymore because 6 has a variable and 2 is a constant number. These cannot join. These cannot join because they are not alike. These cannot join because they are not alike. Okay, here's another example. Pretend like we've already done the distributive property. We have different letters, different variables, different coefficients or the numbers. It says identify the like terms. So this is done with the box and circle method again. It's just not in color, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in color. I'm going to box the letter C, but I should also remember to include that subtract sign in front of the 2 because that goes with it. So really what happened was 7c minus 2c. That's how you get 5c. Then the circle, the letter D, there's 9. But I also need to make sure I take that subtract sign with the 4. So I have 9D minus 4D. And that's how I get 5D. So my overall answer, 5C plus 5D, these cannot combine either. I can't combine C's and D's. They stay individually by themselves. This would just be as far as I could go. Okay, this one is not in your journal if you're in my math class, but I want to go ahead and do it for you because it is one of the questions on the assignment today and it looks a little different than the notes. This says negative 18g minus 17 parentheses, so now here's my distributive property, 14 minus 16g. I do not want to write this down 17 times, so this is a quick way to show that. I am going to have to do my distributive property first. Remember, the number that's immediately outside the parentheses, it's going to multiply with what is inside. So I need to do negative 17 times 14. Then I need to do negative 17 times negative 16g. Okay, when I do this first part, negative 17 times 14, that is 238, but when you do a negative times a positive, it stays negative. Now when I skip over to this side, 17 times 16 is 272, and it has a g with it, but when you do a negative times a negative, that changes to be a positive. Okay, then I'll bring down this other term, which was at the beginning, not part of the distributive property. Now that I'm finished with the distributive property and multiplying out, my next step is combine like terms. So this has a G and this has a G. I can put those together. 272G minus 18G. When I subtract that, I get 254G, and then this number all alone, it doesn't have anything to combine with it, so then I just write it down as my answer all together. 254G minus 238, and that would be my final answer for this.